Hi, and welcome to Virtual Meetings 101. Consumers are understandably concerned about the amount of interaction they have in their homes, and video conferencing software is a great way to facilitate those conversations. We're going to take you through a demo of a software called Zoom. It's easy to download, it's mobile, and it's a great way to facilitate conversations with the homeowner without having to enter the home. Let's take a look how it works.
So what we're going to do is we're going to start with our virtual meeting tips. So as consumers are more resistant to going into the house and your employees push back on going into the home, what we're going to try and do is help you sell at least the sales portion of your presentation 100% virtual. So a couple of tips about doing this. I've been doing this virtual meetings for a number of years now, so I'm going to share my experience with you. So here we go. So we're going to start meetings about 15 minutes early. So what ends up happening with a lot of these services, because of the increased demand from people working from home, is people tend to start their meetings on the hour. What ends up happening is the servers end up surging and it's hard to connect and you get quality issues. So just by simply dialing back the start time of your meetings by 15 minutes, you'll be able to avoid that. When you're setting up meetings, you're going to select phone and audio options. And the reason for that is that some people are using their desktop computers and they may not have a microphone on them. Typically laptops do and iPads do as well, but we want to make sure that we're not running into any hiccups along the way. Always be aware of background noise. It's something you may not notice, but it really does come across on computer audio. So try and do this in an environment where there's no noise to disturb the call. So one other thing too, you want to make sure your computer is in do not disturb mode. So one way to find out how to do that is to actually just Google it based on the operating system you're using, and it will give you directions on how to turn off notifications and so on. Pop-ups and stuff coming in from your email and messaging can be really disturbing to the call. Expect technical issues. So particularly now that there's a surge of people using these systems, expect that you may run into some issues with logging in and whatnot. So my recommendation for that is to back up any of your presentations onto PDF, so that if you do need to switch to a more manual process, you can immediately email that to the customer and have them turn the pages manually for you so that they can follow along with what you're discussing. Really important is to simplify your presentation. So the real estate on a screen is limited, and we don't want to overwhelm a customer with choice. It's probably important at this time to develop packages for your consumer that are easy to understand and cover off most of the bases on your product offerings. We also want to increase your fonts. You want to make sure your font is large enough to be readable on different screen sizes. It may look good on your screen, but they may have a smaller screen and harder to read and follow through. Now, really important right now is to develop and explain your policy document. So what your policy document is basically lays out what you are going to do as a company to protect your customer in these times, and what you expect from your customer to protect your staff. So those would be things like, we're not going to bring cardboard boxes into the house. We're going to unpackage them outside the house. Any equipment that's taken out of boxes will be wiped down with disinfectant. We'll bring those down to the install location. Our expectation is to clean all of those surfaces, anything we have touched, any of the tools we have used with disinfectant before we leave. And from a customer standpoint, we want to be able to practice safe distancing. So we would expect that our customers are not in the area where our people will work for 3 to 4 hours before the installation and up to 3 to 4 hours afterwards, based on the guidance that we're getting from the CDC and the WHO and the previously mentioned Harvard Health. The last thing to do is to practice. So if you're going to start doing virtual meetings, it's important to practice what you're doing. Make sure your presentation is clean and concise. That's really simple. You're just going to call one of your friends and take them through the presentation, get their feedback, and then hopefully you can proceed without feeling so worried about doing such a thing. Okay, so let's take a look at the software that we're recommending right now, and that would be Zoom.us. Okay, you can log into this. They do provide a free solution, and that is good for up to a 40-minute call. Now, obviously, a lot of our sales calls are going to go over that. For most people, the $20 a month plan would be suitable for their needs. I expect that you probably will need to pay for this. I'm going to show you right now how to set up a meeting. And you can do this from an iPad. My recommendation is that you do it from a desktop or a laptop computer. It's going to allow you to move between different files and folders a little bit easier if you are using multiple presentation points. So in this presentation, I'm using PowerPoint, I'm using websites, and things like that. So it's not so easy to move about the way iPads and tablets are set up. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up and schedule a meeting. So we're going to click on this, and we're going to create this and then send it to our customer. So like I said before, the suggestion is that we start our meetings at either 15 minutes before or 15 minutes past the hour to prevent any surges in usage. We're going to set a time period of at least an hour on there. Okay. Now this is telling me that I have a 40-minute trial on this because it's not the upgraded version. So we'll put that back for now. And what we're going to do too is we're going to make sure that we have the host video to on and the participants video to on. They do have an option not to participate, or if they don't have a webcam. I think it's important if we do have the ability to video conference each other. It makes the conversation a bit more intimate and puts a face to each other. It's as close as we're going to get to being in person with our consumer at that time. For audio, we want to make sure we have telephone and computer audio, just in case the customer does not have a microphone on their phone, on their computer. So this just gives us both options. And then you can set up how we want to send that. So that's going to be based on sort of your preference on your computer. If you have a Mac, then you would check iCal or whatever service you use for your calendar. And that's just going to remind you that you have a meeting coming up. So when we do that, we're just going to hit schedule. And I'm going to add it to my calendar. So now what you'll see on the right-hand side is you'll see a list of all of your conferences. So we have one set up now. So what we're going to do is we're going to start that. And it is, we're going to click with join with computer audio. Okay. And then what we have is a couple of options down the bottom. So we can mute the call so that they can't hear you. And I think that's an important thing to remember is that before you start presenting, to make sure that you have muted your microphone so that if you're having a conversation with your colleagues, that the customer, once they log in, they're not hearing that conversation. We can stop the video if we don't want to use video, or we can turn it back on using this button. And so really the only things that we're going to use here is we're going to use the share screen button. So when I click share screen, it's going to give me an option of all the documents that I currently have open on my computer. If you just want to kind of show them your desktop and move between files, then you can just click the desktop item, and then it will just kind of give full control of the computer for them to view. So we'll go ahead and do that. So as you can see, it actually is just showing my exact screen. So from here now, when you have this green, you should have a green border around your entire screen. That means that's the area that your customer can see. So I can go through and I can do my normal presentation, and they can see all that side of it. And just remember that they can see everything on your screen at this point. If you want to pause this for any time, you can actually stop screen share, and it'll put them to this picture of the Golden Gate Bridge, and then you can go ahead and do what you need to do, whether that's calculating things or looking at confidential data and so on that side. So that's really simple on how to do that. Just make sure when you're done that you actually end the meeting, okay, before you walk away. So we're going to end this meeting, and for all, and that's how you do a quick webinar.